Assalamu alaikum and welcome to another episode of DigiPod on DawnNews English. I'm your host, Usama Khilji. Today, we're going to be talking about internet shutdowns and specifically in the Kashmir region, as we've been seeing in the past many years, but specifically in the past week. We have heard governments talk about internet shutdowns as justifying internet shutdowns as a security measure. But in a world of VPNs, satellite internet, encrypted messaging, digital economies, are shutdowns of networks and the internet still effective? Or are the costs now outweighing the benefits? That's a key question. So we'll be talking about not only the human rights angle of internet shutdowns, but also the economic angle of it and how overall entire communities cutting off entire region from the internet and network, what impact that has. So to talk about this and more, we're joined by Sanaa'i Muhammad. Thank you so much for joining us. Sana is a activist, active in the region with expertise also in the Kashmir region, but overall she does many other things. So thanks for joining us, Sana. Maybe we can start a bit about the internet shutdowns and how they're working. So what are you seeing in the Kashmir region right now? We saw that in Indian occupied Kashmir, there was a prolonged internet shutdown. And now we're seeing that in the Pakistani Kashmir, there's also an internet shutdown. But how do they work and what is the impact? Do sometimes direct lines work and when the internet is off, or in certain times is all the lines also off, so no telephone connectivity? And if you can tell us also about if it's specific regions or is it a blanket shutdown across?
Thank you, Sama, for initiating this conversation at a very important time, at a time when we have a mass-scale internet shutdown going on in Kashmir. Uh, like you mentioned, कि internet shutdown जो है वो there's a spectrum. There's not like a single switch. There's a spectrum of internet shutdown, which ranges from a full and complete shutdown of 4G, of cellular service, of all platforms. Then there's a part where only mobile data is switched off, while people do still have access to cellular service. And then, of course, sometimes there's governments or states use throttling, which is done to slow down service or slow down particular apps, which again is harder to prove when you're talking about internet shutdowns, but it is again a very effective strategy, as you have people will face like difficulty uploading videos. There's time lapses in direct communication, let's say on WhatsApp. So there's a spectrum. And as you said, I think the worst and the most significant case that we have seen so far was in Indian occupied Kashmir, however you would like for me to say it, which was almost 22 months of internet shutdown, which again ranged. There was 212 days of an entire shutdown, and then there was, I think, about another 200 to 300 days where there was a partial internet services were available. And so obviously we have experienced this in Pakistan before as well. We've had a very long Twitter ban, and that was eventually lifted. I think when PICA was passed, we had other applications that were then eventually restricted. But as of now, for the situation in Pakistan, Kashmir, since the 6th of June, we've seen a complete shutdown of all cellular, of all mobile data. So people have not had access to internet services. So apart from, let's say, like big businesses and hotels, mostly regular people, common people use 4G or mobile data on their phones to access internet. And in Kashmir, since already the internet that's there is not the best. There's the entire region does not have coverage some a big part of Kashmir has very slow or just partial service, and this is in like normal regular times, not for emergency situations. This is just uh, what the situation has been like, and so this was also a fundamental demand that the people were advocating for or asking for in the Charter of Demands, which has 38 demands. One of the fundamental demands, which also a lot of students and majority of the youth were advocating for and pushing for, was the demand for basic internet facilities throughout Kashmir. And so, yeah, so since the 6th of June, in a region which already did not have decent access to internet, we've seen a complete shutdown, and we region still did have cellular networks. We were able to contact our families, and we were able to contact people on ground via phone call, via text messages. But that too has, as of 2 days ago, has been shut down, particularly and specifically in Ravla Court. Other regions within Kashmir, we have Hajira, we have Dadial, we have Bagh. They still have cellular service. They don't have mobile data. They don't have any access to internet, but we are able to stay in touch with them via phone calls and text messaging. However, as of 2 days ago, as you are probably familiar, there's a big protest going on in Eidgah near Ravla Court. So as of 2 days ago, we've had absolutely no communication from anybody in Ravla Court, and there's an entire complete blackout uh, within and around like the specifics of Ravla Court.
Right. And Sana, what you're describing is that, they're blanket shutdowns, but what we're seeing is that there's also localized shutdowns where there's specific areas where there may be a protest happening or some other emergency. So then internet is switched off. And that's what you're describing over here. How does this really impact the population overall? You've spoken about how this was one in the Charter of Demands about how the quality of internet was so bad. And but that has now been met with an entire shutdown. How does everyday life, professional life, or even otherwise, communication wise, how does this impact that?
Right. So, as I shared with you, even pre the current situation, the internet situation was not very good in Kashmir, right? There was partial access, and that is exactly the point the Kashmiri people were also trying to put forth, that it is impacting the economy, since we have a big digital economy now, right? And so a lot of people have call centers. A lot of people are in virtual universities, online universities. Um, uh, a lot of Kashmiris are already almost one person, I think, from every house is already uh, in a different country, is abroad. We have a big Kashmiri diaspora, and so it's hard for people to stay in touch with each other. It's hard for people to remain connected. Obviously, there's very, very simple things that we understand are or accept as a part of our life, like using Google Maps, like just attending a class online, or like, let's say, like peers having this conversation online. And so all of this is then impacted. You cannot, even before, you could not have had like a proper phone call to somebody, let's say in
Mm,
Ba, over WhatsApp, without it dropping or uh, showing a lot of static. And so obviously people are impacted in many, many ways. I think education is a primary um, issue, or a primary part where a bad or a slow internet impacts. And so people have been like had a harder time attending their classes. Also, in terms of just digital trust, right, which matters a lot within businesses that operate online, that has also been impacted, because now it's not a one-time thing, right? It is a recurrent thing that has now, this is the third year. that Kashmir is seeing uh, internet shutdown. And it might, let's say, last year and in 2024, it wasn't prolonged. It was only a few days. And in 2025, I think it was less than a week. It was 5 to 6 days. But even those 5 to 6 days of no connectivity have a huge impact, especially on small local businesses. And so overall, I think not just connectivity, not just with education, not just with businesses, not just uh, uh, with all of this. So like there's everything is almost impacted since internet is a big part of almost everything that we're doing now.
Absolutely. And you described, the impact on businesses, the economic impact. And, so many people are freelancers now, do digital work. But I'm sure it also impacts people like food delivery or ride hailing, by Kia, all these other services as well, on which people essentially rely on daily wages to earn their income. So, entire families are obviously impacted by all of these shutdowns. Maybe you can tell us a bit about the impact on sharing information or knowing what is happening, because as you described the situation, there has been a shutdown because of protests. But how does that impact our ability to people from there to connect with the rest of the world, but also in people having the information and knowledge on what is happening when it comes to media, social media, and others.
So, when we're talking about Kashmir, with the exception of Muzaffarabad and let's say probably one other bigger city, um, we already don't have facilities like Baikia. We already don't have facilities like Food Panda. Those are privileges that are afforded to us, in urban centers, and so they already do not exist over there. However, keeping in mind the current situation and just the protests that have been happening recurrently over the past years. I think one of the first casualties of a shutdown, of an internet shutdown, is independent information. And so journalists have a very difficult time verifying information, right? Citizens then struggle to communicate their experiences. General people who have family abroad or within the rest of Pakistan struggle to just keep them informed and keep them in touch. And while this internet shutdown is justified by our government, by our state, in the name of security, right? What it actually ends up doing is it creates further chaos and it creates more
Mhm.
confusion instead of actually helping in any with any security measures, and it just ends up creating uh, a lot of paranoia also, a lot of fear, a lot of um, confusion, right? And within there's many issues that then stem from that confusion that is created with an internet shutdown.
What you're describing is that because of the shutdown, there's also misinformation, right? Because if independent information is not coming out, if information cannot be verified, then anyone can create a story. Anyone can use, different methods to misinform others, and hence this censorship or this shutdown can then lead to more misinformation and disinformation, right? There's also a chance for propaganda in such an environment. How have you seen the coverage of what is happening on mainstream media, but also social media? Do you think there's adequate? Is it being reported in an okay manner, or are there issues with it?
Right, obviously. So when there's a complete internet shutdown, most of the information that ordinary people in Pakistan are getting regarding Kashmir, or most of the information usually flows through then official state channels, right? Because uh, okay, so most of the information then flows through mainstream media channels, and within them. With them we have a lot of grievances, we feel like there's been a lot of misreporting in Kashmir's case. We've been getting most of the information as through citizen journalists. It has been through eyewitness accounts, and obviously those eyewitness accounts might not always be very accurate. But then there's no other way to get information. And obviously, if you are in a place where a lot of um where there's a lot of turmoil, or where it's a traumatic situation personally for you also, it's very difficult to be able to assess the situation properly. And so while upstate uh, or the mainstream media channels have been reporting less than 7 deaths, right? Alternatively, on the other end, we've also been getting numbers more which are more than 400. And according to our assessment, I think it is somewhere around 200 people that have who have lost their lives in just the past week alone. And obviously there's a lot of misreporting. A lot of the information that has come out has been through Instagram accounts and Twitter accounts that are being run through people who have family there, who are from there, who have friends there, and who are constantly in contact via phone call. And that is how they're posting the situation. And that is also, those Instagram accounts are also where overseas Pakistanis or families who are abroad are checking for and looking at to stay informed about their families in Pakistan. But then we've also seen that we've received like multiple, like hundreds of messages saying that again, those accounts are also misreporting, or those accounts are not posting verified facts, or they're asking for proof. But at the same time, you have to realize when there are no independent journalists, or actually any journalist at all,
Mm.
apart from like a few mainstream media channels. And recently we had somebody, I think from Independent Urdu, Ramna, who's also an independent journalist. She shared her experience in an article regarding her experience of visiting Kashmir, and she said that we weren't allowed to go to most of the places that we wanted to go and cover, and access was severely restricted. And that obviously it proved difficult to be able to verify anything.
Mm.
How is any of this verification going to happen with this level of censorship and this amount of restriction? And so obviously, like as you said earlier, that there's in all of this confusion, this internet shutdown and cellular network shutdown just creates more and more confusion, and then which obviously does eventually also end up being exploited by all sorts of people.
Absolutely. So at the end, the question really is, do shutdowns still work? Are they really effective? And are they achieving the objective, right? Because there's a huge trade-off between security objectives and justifications, and the economic disruption that such shutdowns are doing. And research shows that internet shutdowns, like you described, are counterproductive, right? Because they're increasing confusion, they're increasing paranoia, and causing confusion. But also on a technical level, in 2026, it's very difficult for people to really restrict information. Information still does come out. It may be delayed. It may not be through the usual channels, but it comes out. So, what would you say? Do you find shutdowns to be working the way that those who are implementing them want them to work? And is there any alternative that you would recommend?
Mm. I think, Sama, the only thing that this internet shutdown is working for is just creating more confusion and more fear, more paranoia, and more mistrust and distrust with the government. Um, right now, let's say we do not actually have 100% verified facts and accounts, right? We don't actually know the exact number of deaths. We've heard all sorts of things. We've also heard that dead bodies are being burnt, but there's no way again to verify any of this information. And I think just a very sad state of affairs, because Pakistan has had a very good relationship with Pakistan, Kashmir, and historically, as we've seen with India, right? India has used a lot of fascist tactics, and it has used pellet guns. We've seen a very prolonged, like a 3 year long suspension of internet services, and in comparison to that. Pakistani state has always had a progressive relationship, and even the people of Kashmir, for the most part, right, have had a very good relationship with the state of Pakistan. And I think it just really strains that relationship also, and it also creates a huge disconnect and uh, mistrust that the Kashmiri people have with the government of Pakistan. And again, I think even if we look at things globally and internationally, Pakistan has always been at the forefront and has always been championing, the case of Kashmir and the case for even like Kashmir self-determination. Pakistan has been that for even like Pakistan's constitutional stance regarding Kashmir has been that, which has then created that trust between the people of Kashmir and the state of Pakistan. And so when things have been done in a very different manner, and they have worked, right? So if we do see some form of protest, if we do see let's say people protesting for things like internet, for subsidies, for just very basic things, even the demand for the removal of 12 seats, all of these things could be just resolved through a political process, and by strengthening the
Mhm.
political process that is there right now, instead of sidelining it and bypassing it, because these are tactics that the Indian government has been using in Indian occupied Kashmir. These are not things that we have seen. And so I think it just severs that relationship, which has so far been very beautiful, which has been strong. Pakistan has always advocated for the Kashmiris' right. And till last year, it was also negotiating, right, with the action committee. Till last year, it was also sitting down with those same people, which very recently, on the 6th of June, unfortunately, Pakistan has labeled the Action Committee, the People's Movement, as a terrorist organization, which is just very unfortunate. And I think that it will do more damage to Pakistan's reputation internationally, its claims for the self-determination of the Kashmiri people, its calls for a referendum, and on an international scale, as well as, I think, regionally. It will create distrust between the Kashmiri people and Pakistan. It will weaken that relationship, which has been very good so far. And again, we have India right there, right? So it will create opportunities for the Indian state, which is very fascist in nature, to exploit uh, this deterioration of this relationship.
Yeah, one can only hope that, what you're saying and what so many people from Kashmir have been saying is taken into account. And like you said, the only solution lies in a political process where dialogue is done between the people and the state of Pakistan. So issues can be resolved in a constructive manner. And like you said, as over history, we've seen, strong support from the Pakistani state for the people of Kashmir. So I think that causing this distrust because of the shutdowns and because of the clampdown on the protest and because of how the action committee has been treated, um, still there is an opportunity for a political solution to this, and for that, ending the shutdown, ending the crackdown, and starting a dialogue process would be the best way forward. Sana, you've talked about, the cost of the internet shutdown on the local population in Kashmir. What is the potential in Kashmir if internet services are to improve and if there are no internet shutdowns? How can we see society change with better internet access?
Right. Thank you, Sam. So, of course, For any effective democracy, I think a free flow of information is of extreme and like critical importance. And so I think the first thing that better internet facilities would do would be to strengthen the democratic process, right? There will be more better informed citizens will be able to make a well-informed decisions. And so I think that would be like the number one benefit of better access to internet. The second thing is that due to a lack of opportunities, which is again something that people have constantly been putting forward, that there's a dearth of opportunities, there's a dearth of employment opportunities, of business opportunities, there's not as much employment opportunities. I think it would also resolve that grievance because there is a huge a digital market, right? Digital market space that those people could then tap into, which they cannot at this moment because obviously we have weak internet services in Kashmir, or in many regions we have like absolutely no internet services. So I think even for Pakistan and for Pakistan Kashmir, that would be a big opportunity. Internationally also, again, Pakistan has been making claims and has been um, uh, saying that it wants to commit to increasing its share in the digital market economy and has been seeing that as a good opportunity. And so, similarly for Kashmir, I think if we have better internet facilities, it would again bring a host of opportunities. That would be readily and locally available to those living in Azad Kashmir. And obviously, another thing that is often romanticized and misquoted is that Kashmir is a very lucky that from almost every house there is someone who is uh, working in a different country. Let's say in Italy, in European countries, in Italy, in Germany, or in we have a big Kashmiri diaspora in the United Kingdom, but most of those jobs are very working class jobs. Most of those jobs are blue collar jobs, difficult jobs, right? And so it's not a very romantic story. We can't really paint a very romantic picture out of that. Like so many families are separated from their loved ones. There's honestly, there's children who are growing up without seeing their fathers. There's wives who get to see their husbands every 4 to 5 years. There's mothers and there's old parents in homes who do not get to see their children, right, that they've raised. And I think if there was if we were to strengthen the quality of internet that is available in Kashmir, it could also contribute to less people having to go abroad in search of work opportunities, and have more opportunities readily and locally available here. And there could a lot of business opportunities. Similarly, I think in for the remote areas which do not have access to education, which do not have access to good universities, it could also resolve the problem of having to move for education a lot, or I could easily say 60-70% of my Kashmiri friends that I know here, right, are have only come here because there was no there's insufficient good quality education and insufficient number of good universities that are present in Kashmir. And so mostly children as young as, let's say, 14, 13, 14, have to move and migrate to cities like Islamabad and Lahore so they can have access to a better high school. And similarly for universities, it is the same case. Then, and so children as old as 13, 14 are separated from their family. And a lot of the Kashmiri young men that we know have grown up in boarding schools and have grown up without their families. And I think the disconnect and that creates has long lasting impacts on also the social fabric of the Kashmiri society, and also like the conscience of Kashmiri people. And I think it would have far-reaching, better internet access would have far-reaching consequences, not just on the level of economy, which would definitely be a huge win, right? It would be a huge gain for Pakistan and Kashmir, and for the people, but also like the social impacts of it, of families not having to be torn apart, of people, young men not having to move to Islamabad or Lahore, or like 22 years old not having to move to England to work as a laborer, I think, and the fact that they could be with their families, I think it would have created benefits even socially and again emotionally and again yeah.
Those are very important arguments because, when we think about the internet and talk about the internet, we hear a lot about digital transformation. But what you're describing is not merely digital transformation, but also social transformation that it could potentially make possible, right? Apart from economic transformation of entire communities. And I think that 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 itself could lead to so much potential being realized. And you've spoken about young men moving, but what the internet also enables is education and work for younger women that oftentimes are not prioritized in getting higher education or in moving for jobs. But with the internet, that equation is also, sort of addressed in many different ways. So thank you very much for joining us, Sana, and for sharing your thoughts on the situation and telling us about the impact the shutdowns have on everyday people and communities, as well as the issue at hand. And one can hope that things will resolve soon. So thanks very much for joining us. That's it from today. We'll be back with another episode of DigiPod on DawnNews English. This is your host, Usama Khilji.